Here's a troubling statistic for you. Thousands of veterans succumb to suicide every year, about 20 per day. That between 2005 and 2016. Those stats according to the Office of Veterans Affairs. But what is also troubling, last year, of the $6.2 million earmarked for suicide prevention among veterans, only $57,000 was actually used to help those vets struggling with the prospect of suicide. Questions then, why, how, and who is to blame? Joining me with details on this very troubling situation is New York Times reporter David Phillips, who has been reporting extensively on these issues. David, thank you for joining us here. Let me start by getting a sense of perspective, if we could. Compare for me what we're seeing in terms of rates of suicides of veterans to rates of suicide amongst non-veterans in this country.
Well, the rate for veterans is almost twice as high as it is for the average national rate. And the rate is particularly high, more than 3 times as high for young veterans, those between 18 and 34. So it's a significant difference.
What are we seeing, however, in terms of increase or decrease in suicides amongst veterans over the last period of years?
Well, I think we need to step back and talk about suicides in general, because in the United States, suicide has been on the rise since about 2000. And in the veteran population as well, it has increased 25% since 1995, which is a huge increase.
Talk a little bit about the different branches of the military, if you would, and where we are seeing the notion of suicide becoming more prevalent.
Well, it is most prevalent amongst the Army and Marines, which one might expect for in terms of combat exposure. But I don't think that we can just think about this as a combat exposure problem. The military or veterans as a whole are very different from the population in that they are overwhelmingly male. They are overwhelmingly older than the rest of the population because we have so many veterans who served in Korea, Vietnam, even World War II. And suicide is a much higher risk amongst men and amongst older men. So that can account for some of it. But there's also is a risk factor for combat exposure. If you saw people killed, if you killed people, if you were unable to prevent people from being killed, that can really weigh on people for a long time.
Let me talk about some of the other scenarios that we see playing out here, one of which I mentioned in the introduction to this conversation here, and that is the fact that a certain amount of money was put aside and earmarked to be actually utilized for suicide prevention, and barely any of it was. Explain, first of all, what that process was supposed to be, and how could it possibly be, given the scenarios we're faced with here, that it was not utilized?
During the Obama administration, there was a growing recognition that suicide amongst veterans, people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan especially, was a growing problem. And the VA really stepped up and tried to do new things to reach out and get those people help. And so they made suicide prevention their #1 clinical priority. And what that meant was pouring lots of money into different programs, not only for treatment, but to let people out in the public, veterans, their families, their friends, know that treatment was available, that there was no stigma to getting help, and here are the resources you have. And so they created this outreach program that since 2011, was given millions of dollars for everything from Facebook ads to billboards that told people about suicide awareness, gun safety, all the things that have been shown to help vets. But around when the Trump administration came in, there was a great turnover in people in the VA central office. And one of the people who left in frustration was the suicide prevention awareness coordinator. She left in the summer of 2017. And when that happened, essentially, there was no one in charge. Meetings were canceled, plans were not approved, and money went unspent. Now, it is often the case that the organizations that we create don't do as well as we hoped, and bureaucracies tend to disappoint. But one of the things that you can usually count on them to do is spend the money that we give them. And so the fact that they were not even doing that, simply buying ads, getting the word out there, is pretty striking of some of the breakdown and confusion that's happening in the VA.
Does it seem to you through your reporting that some of those problems are starting to be alleviated, that we're getting people in the positions so that these programs, especially the one we're talking about now, will have somebody at the helm so that they can start to function the way they're supposed to?
Starting in the very end of this summer, they placed a new head of suicide prevention in. It is the same person who had been the acting head during the whole time when nothing was happening. So I think it's an open question whether something's going to happen. Another red flag for us in the media is that we can't answer the question you're asking very well right now because there's an extremely tense relationship between the national media and the VA's central office. They won't give us any access to the mid-level functionaries that carry out a lot of this stuff.
There have been questions during the course of this most recent administration about leadership at the very top of the VA. What's happening with that right now?
Turnover, turnover, turnover. So the VA, President Trump kept in place one of Obama's top people, a man named David Shulkin, as the head of VA when he came in. And Mr. Shulkin lasted about a year before he was fired via tweet by the secretary. There were a number of reasons. He had misspent some travel money. He was also not always on board with some of President Trump's priorities and had clashed with some of his more conservative political appointees. The president then tried to appoint his personal White House physician, and that man, Ronnie Jackson, quickly had to withdraw amid accusations that he was drunk on duty and misusing prescription medications while a physician. Several months passed before the now in place secretary came in. His name is Robert Wilkie, a man who spent his life in Washington working both as a Hill staffer and as a sort of a high level bureaucrat in the Department of Defense. He's kind of an unknown. Can he bring order? Can he get the right people in? And can they do the job we're waiting to see?
Well, David, as we said from the very beginning, the numbers are staggering. They're terribly troubling. We appreciate your time and effort, the reporting you've been doing on this, and we'll look forward to talking with you again in the future to get a sense of what sort of progress, hopefully, we're making in these issues. David, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks. And one more thing, the VA is still very functional in the healthcare it provides. And so if anyone out there does want to seek help, there are wonderful people there who are waiting.
That's a great point to make to wrap this up. David, thank you again. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
And again, to read the full report on this story, make sure you visit us at metrofocus.org.